It's been a while since I've vlogged.
This is technically my channel still,
but it's basically my vlog, to be honest. Like,
I'm just the cameraman.
Basically, as most of you know, I still go to uni. For my last year of uni, I decided that, you know what, I'm just gonna try and take photography 101 class.
He's learning how to take photos. Because he can't...
This video is based on one of the assignments that I'm doing for this class. So the idea is you have to show how to use a camera technically.
Do you know how to use a camera?
I guess, sort of, right? I mean, I've been doing it for the past 5 years or something, so I better know how to use a camera. I feel like a lot of people watching these YouTube videos might still be beginners, and you do get a lot of questions asking like, hey, like what sort of settings should I use to take these photos? So the idea is I'm gonna go out, take photos with Steph, and we're just gonna get 12 images, all covering a whole bunch of different scenarios and why you use like those kind of camera settings. So let's go. Okay, so the first photo is going to be low ISO. The only reason you use like a lower ISO is because like it's really nice and bright outside. Lower the ISO, less noise in your photo, pretty self-explanatory. For this one, I reckon what I'm going to get Steph to do is I'm just going to take a whole bunch of photos at once where Steph is just moving her hair, and so that way we should be able to get a photo of like hair just like midway through a flip, and it should create like a really cool looking arch. For a shutter speed like that, you want it to be above 1,000, something like that. Yeah. Alright, so the next photo that we're going to take would be neon portrait. So basically the idea is to underexpose the image. So Steph is going to be like a silhouette and we'll have the bright neons in the background. So it's pretty simple, nothing too crazy. So we're doing that in Be Lucky and Sons, which is like an arcade sort of like bar place. They got some pretty cool neon signs. I've shot here before multiple times actually.
With Steph.
Yeah, I've shot here before with Steph. So yeah, let's go do that. For this one, this will be a low shutter, so technically like a long exposure type of photo. So the idea is we're just gonna have a tram go past here and Steph in the foreground. So pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. Just gotta wait for the actual trams to come by and not this truck, and we'll be sweet. I believe that is a wrap on the shoot. I think we've got all 12 images that we need. So yay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you guys want to check out, I am on Instagram or on YouTube. You can check me out at Stefati because I like to eat.
Okay, so we are back now, and how did it go?
I like the photos. I like the photos a lot.
I took a few photos as well, and I'm pretty happy with them. I wasn't doing the assignments, I was just taking the photos my way, so.
Let's start off with shutter speed. To sort of convey fast shutter speed, I got Steph to stand in like a higher elevation point where there's a lot of wind, and we got her to do some hair flips, so that way we'll keep taking the photos and her hair will sort of just stop in the motion. And so I used the shutter speed of 1/2500, which is pretty really fast. If we have somewhat of a slower shutter speed, you'll get like a little bit of a blur from the cars in the background. So that was taken with 1/13 of a second. And with a slower shutter speed, like this was taking at 1/3 of a second, basically Steph is still, but the entire tram is just a massive blur in the background. And as you can tell as well, like it went from a progressively brighter scene to a darker scene as well, because with exposure, obviously shutter speed will change your exposure.
A great example of fast shutter speed would be photos by Hayden, who uses a lot of motion in his photos and particles and stuff, so he uses a fast shutter speed to capture all of those aspects.
And in contrast, someone like Mike, North Borders, who takes a lot of photos at night, he'll usually have a lower shutter speed because he's taking photos at night. So the next setting is depth of field. And with depth of field, usually what you'd associate it with will be the f-stop. So a lower number, such as f1.4, will have a shallow depth of field, whilst a high number like f20 will have a high depth of field, so it gets everything in focus. So for example, with this photo of Stef with shallow depth of field, I used a 105mm lens, which is a telephoto lens, and I also used a lower aperture number. And in contrast to that, we've got high depth of field, which basically gets everything in focus. And to do that, I used a wide angle lens, which shows a lot of the landscape. And I also use a higher f-stop as well of f4. So that way her and the background are all in focus and it shows a higher depth of field.
And the final setting of this holy trinity is ISO, which is basically kind of how sensitive your camera is to the light. So for this first photo of Stef, we used a low ISO because it's a fairly bright day. So generally you would use a lower ISO when the natural lighting itself is fairly good. So for high ISO, you'll get a lot of noise or grain in the photo just because of how sensitive your camera is to light. So for example, in this photo, we used an ISO of 25,600, which is
stupid. Like no one needs to use.
You generally would never use
ISO.
that, yeah.
As for the mid ISO, you kind of just want to compensate it to the rest of your settings. So for example, in this photo, I wanted to make sure that everything is well lit, everything was bright. So with those settings in mind, I just chose an appropriate ISO to sort of balance that out. And so that's where mid ISO comes into play here.
And the last part of Lamont's assignment was to take 3 photos that was overexposed, correctly exposed, and underexposed, which to be honest isn't hard. And so we got pretty creative with taking the photos. For example, the overexposed photos, yes, it's generally pretty white, but we definitely incorporated sort of foreground elements like using her outfit or even just using prisms to sort of create that depth of field as well. Yeah. And a correctly exposed photo is basically, well,
that's pretty self.
Like everything is well lit or how you'd want it to look. But for the underexposed photo, we did a silhouette type of shoot with light in the background and some prism elements in the foreground, having the model itself sort of outlined by those lights. Yeah, so this video isn't really teaching you how to take good photos. This is just simply how to use a camera, because taking good photos is very subjective. It is dependent on your aesthetic or even your environment. Like for example, we each have our own different styles. We each take photos differently. We all see things differently, and we all have a different opinion on what a good photo is. And that generally comes with experience, going out, taking photos and learning what each setting does and experimenting with those settings. So yeah, just go out and take photos.
Yes, you can be taking photography 101 and listening to the tutor and stuff. And yes, it's helpful and doing these assignments is great, but I think the most value you'll get will be going out and actually taking these photos and experimenting yourself. That's where all of our knowledge comes from. Like we're both self-taught photographers. Mike, Liam, Hayden, all self-taught as well. So yeah, definitely just go out and just try it out.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. Go check out the photos on Lamont's Instagram. Go check out mine as well. I'm going to post some photos. And go follow Stef as well. Big thank you to her for modeling for this shoot.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's pretty much the end of this video. If you liked it, be sure to comment down other stuff that you would like us to teach you, even though we're not really experts.
Not the best teachers,
we
to
are
be
not
honest.
experts. But yeah, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you aren't already. And as always, continue to create. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.